Good morning, welcome back. I hope you're enjoying the videos you're seeing so far. Today's topic is going to be inspecting our wood stove before we use it for the first time this season. The weather's changing, it's getting ready to start getting cold. We're going to put this girl back into service. So I'm going to show you a few tools that I use, a few things that I look at to inspect, and we will start at the bottom of the stove and work our way to the top of the flue. I hope this is going to be helpful for you, and I thank you for watching. This will be some of the simple tools I'm going to use to inspect this wood stove. I need a flashlight, and I'm going to need either a nut runner or a screwdriver in order to inspect my flue. I use a soft bristle brush in order to clean up all the dust and things that I cannot get to with this industrial shop vac. This thing does a pretty good job. A big tip I have for you as far as inspecting things that you cannot actually get to is slide your smartphone in there and do a recording of it. Make yourself a video where you can get it out here and be comfortable and actually view it and see if there's any problems or obstructions in the stove, or as well as the flue pipe. This is a real good way to inspect your flue because you can't physically see up to the top side of that. So this may help you, and give that a try. Now, like I said, we're going to do from the bottom to the top of the stove, and let's see if we find anything. I actually cleaned this up at the end of spring. I think I had a fire in the stove one time after I did the initial cleanup, and I am curious to see as to how this thing has remained over the summer. So let's get on with the video. Alright, so the first thing we're going to do is open this girl up. I'm going to be looking for birds or anything that has crawled down inside the flue pipe and possibly blocked off, or the remains laying down in the bottom of the stove. That'll give me a further indicator as to what's above up in the flue itself. So we're going to open this thing up and take a look inside. See if I can get us some light going here. Okay, let me give you guys a view of that. Now, creosote buildup in a stove like that is what we're looking for, and we definitely don't want to see any of that in the flue, because that is what causes your homes to get burned down. It closes off the airflow of the flue gases going up to the top of the flue, and then it can either catch on fire or simply just smother itself out and cause a problem inside the home. Okay, and that's the firebox itself. We are looking at that, and the reason I haven't dumped those ashes yet is I wanted to see what's actually laying in there before I continue to get those ashes cleaned up and remove them from the bottom of the stove. Okay, so that's the inside of it. Now, let's get the ashes out of our way and we'll take a further look. I'm going to look at the top of this ash pan and make sure that I didn't have anything that got into this stove over the summer that I should be aware of. And if not, simply empty your ashes out, and now the bottom of the stove is ready to go, and we'll move on to the next part of the video. Now at this point, before I move any further, I'm going to go ahead and vacuum up all the dust here. Get our door closed back up. It's always nice to start off having these things cleaned up before you make your first fire. That way, if a problem does develop, you already have a general idea as to how your stove looks before we started here. Quick clean up here. Alright. Now, my stove has an inspection door on it. I'm going to push that up a little bit. Be careful here, because this stuff, again, with the creosote and different things like that, I don't know if you can see that falling away or not, but it's good to get this because you can slide bigger sticks of wood in here, and that's what that does. It keeps the smoke from coming back out into the room. So So I want that kind of freed up a little bit. Work it back and forth until that stuff finally falls down. Okay. Now, we're going to see if we can actually get back to the back of that stove and look up and make sure there's no obstruction towards the flue. Let me see if I can lift you guys in there. Alright, now all the way to the back of the stove. That is where the smoke from the wood goes out. And I'm looking across there and I don't see anything stuck down in there that looks out of the ordinary. So, other than the creosote in here, and as we build a fire, that stuff tends to burn itself clean and it stays inside the wood stove, which is exactly where we want it. And up there's the heating chambers. Now there you want to look for, to make sure you don't see any holes or anything that is rusted out on both sides of it. If you have a heat chamber, a lot of small wood stoves won't even have that feature. And I don't see anything out of the ordinary there. So, one last look at our firebox. Back up here just a little bit. See if I can get our light down in there where we can see. Okay, and that's actually fire brick that sits down on the bottom of the stove, and that's where all your coals and ash ends up being. And I don't see any problems there. No broken bricks, no missing bricks, so everything is fine there. Alright, so I think we're good here. We're going to move to the top part of the stove. Alright, at this point I'm going to go ahead and do some more vacuuming here. This is called a plenum, so from the heat exchanger inside the stove, the warm air blows into here, simply goes up your registers to wherever you have them at. Again, each stove is going to vary, so your application, I don't want all this dust pushed into my building here, so I'm going to clean that up, and then we will inspect our electrical system and make sure that our transformer is working along with our thermostat, and we will go on from there. Well, actually, let's inspect our... Okay, I can hear my transformers come on. Make sure my fan's going to work. Okay, that's working properly. And then I can make sure my blower is going to work. And that's the blower that runs the plenum that actually pushes the warm air. So all of that is working fine. Alright, the area you're looking at now, this pipe comes up out of the stove, and this is what actually connects our flue pipe. And I am looking to make sure that I don't have any rust holes or anything like that around this area. Any type of flammable material that may have, you know, gotten set up here over the summer that I haven't paid attention to, paper towels or something like that. So this stuff here you inspect thoroughly. Make sure from this point on that we're going to make sure everything is solid and no rust holes and no obstructions. This is the most important part about the wood stove, is making sure this flue is clean and that it's not damaged in any way. Alright, and the next thing I'm going to do, I have 3 set screws in here I have to remove in order to take the flue pipe down. Now, this work is messy, and because of the creosote inside of the flue pipe, you may take a little extra precaution to where this stuff can fall. We're going to be real easy with this, because I'm assuming that there's creosote inside of here, and I don't want to get this all over to where I have to worry about it being behind the stove where I can't get to it with a vacuum cleaner. Okay, pull my ladder back where we can get to it. I'm going to need my glasses. And I've already taken the time to remove the bottom screws. Got that side screw moved again, so good there. Right now I'm going to move my ladder back. I'm going to pull this out away from the flue that's actually connected to the outside wall. And then I'm going to have to wiggle it side to side in order to get it to move up. Again, once this stuff all burns its way in, it gets to where it's a little harder to move. Be real careful with this point, except we don't want to have a whole bunch of creosote like that. Okay, now I have the pipe ready to come on down with me. And I'm going to lean this back so all that stuff stays inside this pipe, just like this, and I will carry it outside and we'll take a look. Oop, caught it. Alright, I'm going to zoom in. This is what I was talking about. I don't know if you can see those guys up there, but those are dirt dauber's nests. And they had made their way down that flue over the summer. And that's exactly the things that we want to make sure that we get out before we have our first fire in the stove this year. We don't need that stuff catching on fire in there. Okay? First, let's clean the flue pipe and we'll come back to that. Alright, now that's the inside of the flue pipe. That's the creosote I was talking about. And that is from one fire, maybe two, at the end of spring. And this was a new pipe when I put it on. So that stuff can build up quickly. And I don't run this stove hot down here in this building simply because we're not here all the time. But you can see, this is why we're inspecting it. We'll get all that stuff removed from there. And then we know when we fire up the stove for the first time this season that everything's going to be safe. Alright, let me get that knocked out of there and I'll show you how we're going to do that. Now the best way I have found to do this, guys, is if you have an old broomstick and actually trim that rounded edge off of there, that makes a nice surface that you can slide down inside the pipe and break that creosote loose. But I actually have a scraper on this end. Now we're going to be really careful. I'm going to scrape this end down first and get it laying down in this elbow. And then I'm going to lift the pipe slightly and push this stuff down. That way I don't get this all over my floor. I would do it outside, but it's really windy and I don't think you guys would be able to hear me. So, grab my flashlight. Now we want to be real careful with this pipe. Even though we are inspecting it, it's still, after it heats up and cools down so many times from having a fire in your stove, this stuff becomes brittle. Now at this point, if you suspect, if you can push on this and actually dimple the steel and feel like your finger's going to go through it, replace it. Do not use this stuff any further. So we want good rigid pipe. You can see the stuff falling loose. Make sure that you can't squeeze it real easy, and because if you start seeing pinholes or something like that in here, again, replace this immediately. Don't use that. Keep your family in there and worried about this thing catching on fire. Let me grab my flashlight. Now, this doesn't have to be 100% spotless. We're just going to knock all the stuff that's ready to fall out of there pretty easy. Now let's see if I can get that end up. Make sure you can see that still. Probably not. This is a messy job, guys. So stuff does fall off pretty easy on the inside of this pipe. Now, as you keep a fire in your stove, most of the time this stuff will burn itself clean, and inspect it as you see fit, depending on the type of wood you burn and how often you have a fire. If your stove, when you're opening your door and the smoke tries to come inside the building instead of out the flue, then you probably have blockage. Would be a good time to inspect it then. This is not a once a year deal, one and done. You want to actually get this to where the stuff is, again, you can depend on it, but you don't have any problems with it either. So you may have to do this 4 or 5 times a year. Okay, now we will see if we can dump this out and let you see how much stuff was actually in there. Got it pretty clean. Alright, I went and got us a bucket. Slide that guy out of there. Okay. Now, I'll show you down inside this while I have you sit there. Again, it doesn't have to be 100% clean. We are definitely do not want blockage in there of any kind. And now as I light a fire in the stove, actually I got a little bit more down there in the corner that I can get to. But the stove will help keep this stuff burning and moving up the flue. So just make sure you don't have any blockage in your pipe. See if I got that. Yeah, it's pretty good. Okay. Dump this guy out one more time. We're ready to move on to the next step. Like I said, obviously to do this outside, that way you don't have this all inside your home. And I'm simply doing it in here so you guys don't have to listen to the wind. I'm going to stand this guy up. Okay. Maybe I'll lay it down then. Right. Now we're going to move to our next step. Actually, I do want to show you. That is about a quarter of a 5-gallon bucket. And again, that's no more than 2 fires because I did this early spring. So, flue pipe is the most important thing on your wood stove to make sure you keep your family safe. Inspect that thing thoroughly and make sure that you're not dealing with that. Okay? Alright, our next step is the wood stove again. And you can see creosote sitting in there. Now, all this stuff will fall down into the stove for us. So what I'm going to do is just take and scratch this stuff loose. Use a screwdriver. Again, it doesn't have to be 100%. We just want to make sure the stove can breathe like it needs to. Get most of that stuff down in there. Rake it around, and then we can inspect the rest of our stove here. And your stove may not be like this. It may not actually have this is called a flame diverter. So all the flame stays to that side of the stove, and the smoke comes up this side of the stove, and then up the flue pipe. Okay? Yours may not have this piece of steel there. It may just be a direct from the fire, and a direct piece of pipe that goes straight out the top of the stove. So, wood stoves vary. We just want to make sure that we get all the stuff loose and down. Okay, alright, that looks pretty good. Now we're going to move up to this guy. Let me get us some light up here so we can see, and we're going to get those dirt daubers out of there and clean that piece of pipe up, and that goes to the outside. So we're getting close to being done. Alright, at this point, now I'm not going to be able to clean this out while I'm holding you guys up here, so I'm going to show you what we're dealing with. Then I'll clean it out and bring you back to it. But at this point, we're going to scrape all that stuff loose. I actually have a clean out on the outside of the building, so I'm simply going to let that stuff fall down the pipe, and then we'll be able to sweep it out there. Okay? But this is the part, the important part, you do not want it obstructed. And this is where you could slide your cell phone back into that hole and look up to the top of your flue and make sure no birds has built nests or anything like that in there. If you can see daylight out through there, you're going to be in pretty good shape. Okay? Alright. So there's all the stuff that fell down out of the pipe, and you can see we got the top of it pretty clean. And again, that stuff is flammable. So if you get a good hot fire going in here and the flame reaches its way up through that flue pipe, it will set that stuff on fire. And that is called creosote. That's 100% flammable. Alright, let me get that swept out. We'll get on to the next part. Alrighty guys, we've got that swept out. And I want you to know that you guys have inspired me. And I went ahead and finished up my flashing all the way around, and I've been working on that for, I don't know, 18 years or so. But, like I said, you inspired me to do a good job, do better work, so I got it cleaned up, everything's taped off. This aluminum flashing acts as a heat shield from the flue pipe. This pipe all the way back down to the stove is running the same temperature as your stove does normally. It's extremely hot. So, again, this is a heat shield, and now that I have everything sealed back up, that makes it a little bit safer. Okay, on to the next part. Alright guys, we're going to go back with our flue pipe now. I'm going to get the bottom set in place. You have to kind of get everything lined up before you start pushing this stuff back into where it belongs. Now I'm pushing it down into the stove. I'm trying to keep this top lined up. This gets tricky. Now, I've made a good seal all the way around. If I have this right, my screw should start right back into the pipe here for me. Yeah. Everything looks square. Seated under the stove good. So, we'll put the rest of my retaining screws in, and we're going to call that project finished. While I'm at it, what a handy little light. It's got a magnet on it, extremely bright, LED. Grabbed this at Menards for $15, I believe it was. It's 2000 lumina. It does have 3 different settings on it. And what a nice work light. I've been able to use this thing and put it in different locations today. That has worked out really well for me. It's made by Smart Electricians. Like I said, we picked this up at Menards. If you guys are needing a little work lamp, it also runs on batteries, by the way. So you can put 3 AA's or 4 AA batteries in here. Or you can leave it plugged up to the wall. So, yeah, that was a good buy. If you guys need one of them, I would recommend that. Alright, so we have it. Flue's installed now. We know it's clean. The wood box and the stove itself has been inspected, and the electrical is working. Now, if you've never done this kind of work before, call a professional. Have them come out and actually inspect your flue for you. That way you're 100% safe. You have your family in there, and don't take any chances. I've showed you general knowledge about this, so I hope it's been helpful to you in some way. And again, thanks for the inspiration. I finally finished up things that I should have been doing a long time ago. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next video.